I always
You want to introduce you first?
introduce me. I can do. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Session W. This is a selection of talks which are based around enhancing hepatitis C treatment. Enhancing efforts to improve Hep C outcomes is what we're here to do. I'm Dave Whiteley. I'm a nurse and research fellow at Glasgow Caledonian University, and my co-chair.
I'm Dr. Lise Lafferty. I'm a senior research fellow at the Kirby Institute and at Centre for Social Research and Health at UNSW in Sydney. We are looking at our cheat sheet up here, and it says, please refer to housekeeping notes, and there are none. So I think everyone knows where the toilets are. If not, there's those lovely people in the blue jackets to help you. And this is a hybrid session, so we're going to have people presenting in person as well as, I think we've got 2 virtual sessions. So we will go ahead and get started. So our first presenter is Dr. Mohammed Abu Hassan, who is a clinical gastroenterologist. He is also recently appointed as the Deputy Director General of Health, Research and Technical Support of the Ministry of Health, Malaysia. Apart from clinical and administrative works, he has been actively engaging in a number of clinical and community trials. He has a special interest in hepatitis, NAFLD, preventative medicine, and treatment access. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay. It's my pleasure to share our project to accelerate hepatitis C virus treatment initiation in people who inject drug from remote area via resource and network sharing among primary care center in Malaysia. Before I move on, just a few facts about how some information which have led us to embark on this project. So in Malaysia, we have started treatment for hepatitis C somewhere in 2018, which is freely available because of the we managed to obtain compulsory license for the surface buoy. So the treatment has been decentralized to all the health facilities throughout the country until 2022. Then we start to realize that most of the patients who have reached us at the health facilities have already received the treatment. So now we are looking at, because we know that there are a lot more patients out there in the community who have still not been treated. So we are looking at beyond those patients who have reached to us. So among them will be those who are unreached people who inject drug in the community. So there are a few reasons why I think there are still a lot of patients still out there who have not received the treatment. One of the reasons is that not all of them have signed up for the OST program, or methadone therapy, so-called in Malaysia. And many of them are actually residing in somewhere what we call some remote area. And this area, normally the primary healthcare is very resource limited with lengthy laboratory turnaround times. So that probably a few reasons why it limits them to access to our healthcare facilities. So the objective of the study is to assess the feasibility of new simplified test and treat model in primary healthcare center in rural area, which aimed to accelerate hepatitis C treatment initiation among people who inject drug through resource and network sharing. It's a longitudinal observational study, which include all the adults above 18 years old tested positive for hepatitis C antibody with history of intravenous drug use. They are receiving OST at participating primary healthcare center or being regularly followed up at the participating primary healthcare center, or refer from nearby primary healthcare center, or refer by the outreach program. Those who have been treated before will be excluded from the study, and the estimated sample size is 194. A bit of the study setting the study was conducted at a semi-rural state in Malaysia, East Coast. There are 4 primary healthcare involved, and the study started from 1st of February till the end of the year 2021. So the diagram here illustrates the normal workflow for a patient to be treated for the hepatitis C, starting from the screening until the confirmations of the SVR. So more or less, I think this model is more or less is the same like what we have all this while in locally. But what's the difference mainly at the step 3, whereby the on-site viral load assay with gene expert being carried out at this point of view. So the 2 key features in this the 2 key features which I would like to highlight here from this model is that number 1 is a network sharing, which is more of the coordinations and also collaboration networking from the public health side, as well as from the primary healthcare setting itself, alongside with the local CSO, is a well demonstrated in terms of the networking. And also the other highlight is the resource sharing, because in this particular project or in this particular study, there's only one gene expert system was shared and placed in each participating center for 2 to 4 months. So among the measurements have been evaluated here. These are the list here. The first one is coverage and result of the on-site viral load test, rate of treatment initiation, rate of same-day treatment initiations, treatment completions, and also treatment outcome, which is the SVR. So the characteristic is the same like most of the people who inject drug in our populations. Majority are the male, almost all of them male and Malay ethnicity. And what is interesting here is that about more than half of those patients who've been included, there are actually from the nearby primary healthcare who've been referred to the center, as well as from being referred from the outreach program. Other characteristics, there are about 90% of the HIV co-infections among that populations, and there's about 1% co-infection with hepatitis B. And another interesting finding was that more than 40% of them had already had the RDT positive for more than a year. So this is the result. 199 patients underwent on-site viral load testing, and out of that, 78.4% reported to have a detectable HCV RNA level, which is viremia confirmation, and 9.6% had cirrhosis, and 97.4% out of 156 patients received DEA treatment based. And there are about 4 of them. I think the whole reasons why they did not get the treatment simply because they are decompensated, have a co-infection with hepatitis B, and one of them been imprisoned. And the other result shows here is that 71.1% of those patients received the same day treatment because we have on-site viral load testing. So they have the treatment on the same day itself. And 76.2% of them completed the treatment, and 99, almost all of them returned for the SVR testing. And out of that, 92.2% achieved SVR. Another observations we have observed during this study is that there was some differences a bit between the non-OST participant and also OST participant. We found that non-OST participant more likely to receive the same day treatment, and the OST participants are less likely to default on the treatment. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, this model treatment is initiations in the PWID who are in the remote area was accelerated using this model on-site treatment, confirmations of the viremia. This bringing new perspective to the existing decentralized test and treat model, which is networking and also resource sharing. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. If anyone has any questions, and just a reminder, you can use the microphones or you can use the app, or if you're online, that's also an option. I have a couple of questions. That was really fascinating. I was very intrigued by a couple of things. The follow-through, the retention for follow-through throughout was just very impressive. So I'm wondering, how did that occur? Did you have any insights on that? How the retention happened?
That's where I was saying about the networking and also the collaborations between the public health and also the site at the health facility itself where the study was conducted, together with the CSO, the local CSO, because the participants has been contacted to be reminded about their follow-ups and also about, for example, like they need to come back for the SVR, so and so forth. The only thing which you can see there is that quite a number of patient default, because I think we are talking about this particular group, which is a difficult patients. They are staying in the very remote area. So some of them somehow or other default. But I think overall, the uptake is, well, as you said, fantastic, I think.
Yeah. My other question is, because I know that often having people wait around for their results can be quite tricky. So point of care, we all say it's amazing, it's wonderful, you can get fast results, but it's still relying on patients sitting around and waiting or returning. So how did that happen? Did they wait? Did they come back? How did you keep them interested?
That's right. I think that's why 75% of them actually had the treatment initiated on the same day itself. So this is very good. And then they are those people who are willing to wait, because they still have to wait. For the confirmations of the viremia, and then after subsequently for the DEA to be prescribed or dispersed to them. they are willing to wait. So the rest, those who are not willing to wait, we have to come back and ask them to come back again within 28 days at their convenience.
If no one else got a question, I'd like to ask just about practicalities of how the medication was given, because oftentimes there's lots of debate around whether we give a month or a week, or were patients given the full course and waived off?
Oh, okay. I have to. I'm not quite sure how many proportions of the patients was given the whole 3 months, but if I could still recall, there are patients who are on the OST therapy who has to come again. So these are also some of the patients who've been, been served the medicines, of course, like a observed treatment to the extent. So there are two extremes. It's a mixture depending on how compliance is going to be the patient upon evaluation.
And I'll just ask a final question, if that's okay. You had 70%, I think it was, that started on same-day treatment, which was amazing. And you'd said something about people who are receiving OST were less likely to start. Was there anything else about, any other reasons for that 30% that meant they couldn't start same-day treatment?
Yeah, that mainly those people who probably they just do not want to wait, basically. I think so they just want to come back on another day because, as I mentioned just now, I think they have to wait for the results, and they have to wait. Of course, on top of that, there are multiple processes they have to go through, and then subsequently they have to wait for the medicines and the counseling, so on and so forth. But a lot of this work, I think we managed to overcome it because of the work done by the whole team, including the CSO who has been working closely with these patients.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is an in-person speaker, Mercy Nayakawa. She's a program officer for the National AIDS and STI Control Program in the Kenyan Ministry of Health. Thanks, Mercy.
Thank you. I'm here to present about the role of adherence support in achieving HCV cure among people who inject drugs, accessing harm reduction settings in Kenya. And I will be presenting this on behalf of the Kenyan MOH and also on behalf of the people who inject drugs who've been doing this research together. And to start it off, I have no interest to declare. And again, I just want to begin by acknowledging and thanking the people who inject drugs who have been generously participating in this research, both as participants and also as the peer navigators. Just to give you a background of the study, we know that there is very limited data regarding the factors associated with SVR among people who inject drugs in lower middle income countries. So the objective of this study was specifically to evaluate the factors associated with sustained virological response in a cohort of PWIDs who we treated with direct acting antivirals in Kenya. Our methodology was we recruited people who inject drugs who are accessing medication at the MAT centers and also who are attending the needle and syringe programs in Nairobi and the coastal region. And maybe one of the questions will be why Nairobi and the coastal region. Historically, that is how the heroin has been moving in Kenya, from Nairobi to coast region, and that's where PWIDs are predominantly, like that's where the PWIDs live. So in one of those photos, that is one of the methadone centers where we are having the photo with a cartoon and also some write-ups. And that is where the PWD sits whenever they are coming in for their methadone. And also on the right side, we are having one of the NSP centers. Inside the NSP room, where the PWADs are attended to whenever they go to the NSPs. So all the participants that we recruited were participants who had been treated on site with leldisipavir and sofosbuvir under the direct observed therapies. So whenever a participant was on MET, the DAS were dispensed every day together with the MET. As you can observe on the photos, we are having a pharmacist dispensing the DAS on the left, and on the right, you are having one of the participants taking their methadone. So whenever you are having your methadone, you also had to take your DA. Then for those who are treated within the NSP site, the DAs were also dispensed daily under the direct observed therapy at the NSP sites. However, in both the NSPs and the MAT clinics, the peer case managers supported on-site DOT and also field-based outreaches whenever the clients were not able to come for their daily observed therapies. So like on our left, you are having one of the clients who was in a rehab, and the peer case manager has to just go to the rehab every day to ensure that this client was able to receive their DAA. Then on the right, one of the clients who was like, his priority was more to hustle than to go to the NSP for his daily dose. So whenever this client was not able to go to the NSP, it meant that the peer case manager, the peer navigator had to just wake up that day and go and see this client and ensure that the client is able to take their medication. Our definitions were as follows. Treatment completion meant taking all the 84 doses regardless of the number of days it took a participant to complete their dose. We also defined fully adherence as taking the 84 doses in 84 days. We used bivariate and multivariate logistic regressions to examine the impact of sociodemographic, behavioral, and clinical factors on SVR. Our results were as follows. Among the 92 participants who initiated on treatment, their mean age was 63.3 years. Then 79 of those participants were male. 87 of those participants reported injecting drugs in the last 30 days. 87 of the participants also reported having ever been incarcerated. 31 of the participants reported spending 1+ night jail in the last 12 months. 68 of the participants were on methadone, 38 were HIV positive, 12 were cirrhotic, and the HIV genotypes were identified out of the participants who initiated on treatment were 51 was genotype 1A, 38 was 4A, and 3 of them had mixed genotypes of 1A and 4E. Our treatment outcomes were as follows. 92.4%, which is 85 of the participants, completed their treatment, and 79, which was 85.9 participants, achieved SVR. So we noticed that adherence, which was the average number of doses that was taken, was 80%, and the maximum number of days taken to treatment completion was 125 days. So again, from our results, just observing the predictors of SVR among the participants initiated on DAA therapy in multivariate analysis, we were able to conclude that SVR was not associated with social demographic or behavioral factors, but SVR was associated with the number of doses that was taken with a p-value of 0.01. So the results again are highlighted in this table, whereby on the horizontal axis you are having the participants and also corresponding to the number of days that were taken for participants to complete their treatment. The green showed the continuous taking of the DAA without basically missing out any dose. And the yellow shades represent the number of times a participant was able to miss their dose in one occasion or another. And you can observe that it took between 84 to around 125 days. The longest a participant took their dose was around 125 days, where majority were between 81 and 85, as highlighted by that line. Then from these results, we can see that most of the participants, as shown, achieved their SVR. And those who didn't achieve their SVR, the reasons were we were missing some of the SVR data, just a smaller proportion. Then we had some few participants who had detectable SVR, and also we had a few participants who had treatment discontinuation. Our conclusions were that DOT in methadone and also NSP's settings was feasible in Kenya, and as much as it is feasible in Kenya, PCM support is critical for this model of care. However, we also acknowledge that it's important that additional research should be done to evaluate other HCV treatment settings and models of care. Even as we say that, we know that NSP and MAT access is quite variable in the LMICs, and DOT may not be sustainable within the limited resources. And to just acknowledge the people we've been working with, our collaborators, of course, have been the Ministry of Kenya and the National AIDS and STI Control Program where I work, and our funders have been the NIH and NIDA, with collaboration from Albert Stein Global Health Center, but also the NSP facilities that we are working with at the MSF, MDM, SAPTA, and the collaborating labs were KEMRI and CDC. So this is basically a photo of some of the participants in the NSP sites and also the MAT clinics that we've been collaborating with to do this research. And this is a photo to just show the peer case manager in a training session to ensure that they are able to deliver treatment and also to just deliver harm reduction messages to the participants whenever they interact with them at the drop-in center or at the base camps. And I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mercy. Does anyone have any questions for Mercy? Oh, there's a question on the...
We can't read it.
The question is, can I ask, please, regarding the SVR, how many weeks post-treatment does that relate to, 12 or 24?
12 weeks.
A simple answer.
They also said, thank you, great presentation.
Yes, they did, sorry.
I have a question. Sorry, I'm going to pull you back up. I have a question about the peer case managers, because you talked about them as being critical to the model. So how often did they have to go out? How easy was it to find people? Could you just elaborate?
Okay, so in Kenya, what the peer case managers do is at every NSP site, each peer case is allocated a certain number of participants that he has to follow. Our ratio is normally around 40 participants per peer educator. So for this specific study, it meant that each and every participant was supposed to be at the clinic at a specific time to receive their DOT. So if by 9 o'clock the participant is not yet in the clinic, it simply meant that the peer case manager had to leave and go and look for these clients. So they know their base camps and they know their homes. So it was a little bit easy to find them because we've already calculated that and they already take care of these participants. So every peer educator is supposed to know a participant by name, their base camp, and their home. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Can I prolong the agony just one second more, Mercy? I couldn't help noticing that 95% had been incarcerated at some point, and I was wondering what the current situation is with treatment in prisons in Kenya at the moment for hepatitis C. Does that happen?
Just come again, the kind of situation of treatment?
So I was wondering about whether Hep C treatment in prisons is happening in Kenya, if that's something.
Currently, Hep C is not happening in the Kenyan prisons. However, we have methadone dispensing centers within the prison where we also dispense hepatitis C for the participants who are hepatitis C positive. However, during this study, we didn't have the methadone dispensing centers in the prison, so it meant that the participants were to be to be escorted with the police to just take their DOT on daily basis. So whenever they took their methadone, they also took their hepatitis C treatment.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So we go back to another virtual presentation. I have the joy of introducing my boss and mentor, Professor Carla Treloar, who is a Scientia professor and director of the Center for Social Research in Health and the Social Policy Research Center. Welcome.
Hi, hello everyone. I think I win the prize for the worst lighting tonight. So apologies for that. Just trying to get my slides into full. So I'm not talking about hepatitis C treatment at all. So apologies if you came along for that. What I'm going to talk about is a multi-method project where we used a research-informed, co-designed, arts-based intervention to see if we could change attitudes of the general public towards people who've just been released from prison and with injecting drug use histories. My colleagues and I have some disclosures to make, and this project was funded by the National Health and Medical Research Council in Australia. So a brief bit of background. In Australia and probably in many other places, people with a history of injecting drug use are very populous in the prison population. In Australia, 58%, and experience a really high reincarceration rate compared to all Australian prisoners. So in Australian data, 90% with a 10-year reincarceration rate compared to 40% of all Australian prisoners. Now, it's widely known for many years, systems failures and lack of structural competencies within services to better support people transitioning from prison into community. The general public's attitudes are really important here, as we see those negative attitudes of the general public also evident in media reporting among healthcare and other professionals in services designed to help this transition. And those attitudes can exacerbate successful entry to the community. So in this project, we did quite a number of things. We were initially funded for a qualitative project with people recently released from prison with a history of injecting drug use, and we did that and got some great data. And then we started to think about, well, what could we do with that data to really affect some bigger change? So, of course, as researchers, we try to produce plain language summaries of this, but we'd been working in other formats, and my colleague here, Karen Drysdale, is just fantastic at this kind of work. We decided, could we use our data to produce more engaging narratives by working with a community advisory group of people with lived experience, professional writers, and performers with lived experience. And if we could turn our research into engaging narratives, could we then see if it actually affects a change? So we chose one of these narratives to put into a randomized control trial with the question of, can we affect an attitude change and with an arts-based narrative, and would that change be bigger than a change we might get if we were just using a neutral control or summary of the research? So to outline that in just a little bit more detail, so the qualitative interviews we did in and around Melbourne, Victoria in Australia, and interviewed about 48 people. They're all adults. They'd served a prison term of greater than 3 months and released within the previous 12 months, and all had a history of injecting drug use. This slide's got a lot in it, but I'll step you through it. So we had a community advisory group at the top, helping us work through where we were going from our academic work into these arts-based narratives. So on the left-hand side, we had a number of key themes that we pulled from these qualitative interviews about ego depletion, which is really about the cognitive exhaustion people described when they were released into a hostile structural environment. The second was around structural competency of services designed to assist people in post-release period. And the third is about trust in health and social systems for this group of people. So each of those kind of academic scholarly summaries of our data were worked through with professional writers, working with a mentor to produce these artistic, arts-based narratives. Then with a second mentor who worked with people with lived experience to absorb and perform these narratives so that we could record them, add a bit of audiovisual stuff to it, and produce them for general consumption. And for any Australians in the audience, the person who hosted this, did the intros and outros, is Caroline Craig, who's the narrator of the Underbelly TV series. So once we had these narratives written, produced, and performed, we put them into this randomized control trial. So we had 3 arms, the intervention arm, which received the narrative interventions, the arts-based, arts-informed, arts-based interventions, the neutral control, which was me trying to be as bland as possible, really hard, I know, but trying to be as neutral and bland as possible, doing a plain language summary of the research, and a control group which didn't receive anything. So the 3 groups completed baseline survey measures of attitude and a few other things. They went off to their various groups to receive or not receive the interventions to which they were assigned. The intervention groups completed immediate post-intervention measures, and then we followed up everybody at 3 months to see if any effects we were able to elicit were they sustained. So again, just time for a very short amount of detail here. So we recruited about 2,200 people at baseline and had about 50% at that 3-month mark. So before I get into the results, I just want to show you how incredibly important this is. So at baseline, this is the whole sample where we have 78% of our general public sample saying, yes, they would behave negatively towards someone because of their injecting drug use. So really high levels of stigma. And 71% saying they would behave negatively towards someone because of their history of incarceration. So a lot of change is possible, but did we achieve it? So again, just a big skate across the top of this in one of our attitudinal measures. This is exactly what we wanted to see. So the yellow line or the top line is the control, stable across the baseline and the follow-up measures, nothing changed. The red line or the middle is the bland or neutral control where we did affect a change, but not as big as the green line, the arts-based intervention group, which have achieved a significantly larger change in attitudes. And just to show you, we achieved the same on another measure of empathy towards the target group here. So to summarize, we saw immediate positive changes of interventions and after the interventions, and this was larger for the narrative arts-based intervention than the neutral control, but with a tendency to revert to baseline after 3 months, which is a typical finding in this type of work in all sorts of areas, not just our area of interest here. So the narrative intervention has the potential to influence public opinions, but we need to reinforce this over time. So yes, this is all great. We need drug law reform. So we're not putting people into prison with simple histories of injecting drug use so that we don't actually produce the population that we're interested in. But we need that drug law reform as well as stigma reduction campaigns. Law reform obviously provides lots of things. It removes that prohibition. It provides protections in law, gives us additional tools to examine the ways in which services are set up and run, and enables community agency for the claiming of rights. But even with law reform, stigma will endure. We know this from research into gay and lesbian populations in Australia. Decriminalisation of homosexual acts has been on the books for almost 5 decades in some states, but not a day goes past without homophobic stigma and discrimination towards the gay and lesbian people. So stigma will endure. Public opinion is important because it drives policy and it drives a political will to engage in better service provision, more acknowledgement of the rights and claims of dignity for people in this particular group that we were looking at. So I'll just flash this up here, but the main thing is my email address. We have links to these videos that we've produced, links to the papers on which they're based, a third one coming, hey Lise. And our group is also running some short courses on stigma in healthcare. And again, if you email me, I can send all of that stuff to you. Thank you.
I'm just going to say I do recommend going out and watching those videos because they're pretty powerful. If no one has any questions just yet, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot, Carla, and ask you, because you talked about that, that need for reinforcing over time. And how do we do that? Because we can't keep dipping into people's Facebook feeds with these videos, or can we?
Why can't we? You know, this is kind of like the logic of any advertising is repeat, repeat, repeat. So we need to do it in a smart way, in a way that doesn't put people off. But I think we learn the lessons from the commercial sector and use them for our own purposes.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. I may be inferring something, but all but one of the performers seemed to be female. I don't know, I was picking that up from the names, but I might have got that wrong. I was wondering if it was a conscious decision to have female or male people perform in the narratives, in the view of does one voice influence more than another?
Yeah, good pickup. Yes, you're right. One of the 4 performers was a man. You know, that's something, if we had all the resources in the world, we'd love to test, you know, to have different voices perform the same messaging, but we didn't. We don't have all the resources in the world, so we were limited to the people that we could find with lived experience and of course we paid them for their expertise, just wanting to say that. And but you know, we would love to test older, younger voices with accents to buy into that kind of intersectional analyses of who might be seen more as more blameworthy, to use the stigmatizing language deliberately, than others. And is that important for the ways in which we might construct these arts-based interventions?
Thank you.
Well done. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much, Carla.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Our next speaker is in the room and is Dr. Brian Conway. Brian Conway is an infectious disease physician specialising in the design and evaluation of novel models of care for the treatment of Hep C infection in vulnerable populations. He's collaborated with researchers on national and international levels of clinical trials and published extensively on his real-life experiences in this field. Thank you, Brian.
Pleasure to be with you and to speak briefly about our community-based outreach programs for the treatment of HCV in particularly vulnerable populations, and in this particular case, treatment with sofosbuvir and velpatasvir. So the SIMPLIFY study was a clinical trial undertaken among active drug users to evaluate the efficacy of sofosbuvir and velpatasvir for the treatment of hepatitis C in that setting. In 103 individuals, 12 of which were enrolled at our center, 97 of 103, or 94%, were cured, with the other 6 not having achieved a cure for reasons that had nothing to do with hepatitis C. So there was no virologic failures. But it was felt that this population may be a bit selected in terms of individuals who could enroll in a clinical trial, and there was a need to evaluate this intervention in a more vulnerable population with more hectic drug use, homelessness, or both. And this is a study that we have undertaken in individuals with chronic hepatitis C infection and active drug use at the time of enrollment. Those that had been previously treated with DAA therapy, those with decompensated cirrhosis, active hepatocellular carcinoma, or hepatitis B that required treatment were not included. At baseline, we had thought to potentially exclude individuals who were too hectic for enrollment in treatment, and I will tell you that at baseline, there were no such exclusions that were implemented. You look at the table in the bottom left side of this slide, you will see that the median age was 47. We're pleased that almost 30% of enrollees were women, 80% were unstably housed, 10% were HIV co-infected, 12% were cirrhotic. A few had previously been treated with interferon-based treatment, Many had genotype 1 infection, a reversal compared to some previous studies in this particular field, and the majority had active drug use, most of which was fentanyl. 219 patients have been screened, 187 have started treatment, 32 remain in the pre-treatment phase, and none have been lost to follow-up. 148 of the 187 have completed treatment. 31 are still on treatment. Unfortunately, 5 have died of opioid overdose, which is a consequence of the opioid crisis that we have in British Columbia, and 6 were withdrawn from treatment for being a little bit too hectic in terms of their adherence to treatment, and we hope to reinitiate treatment at some point going forward. Of the 148 that have completed treatment, 123 have achieved an SVR12 measure. All of those individuals are cured. 13 are cured 4 weeks after treatment. We're awaiting an SVR12 measure. 8 are awaiting an SVR4 measure. 4 virologic relapses and 4 individuals in whom we do not yet have data. So if we look at the 140 individuals in whom an outcome has been determined, so the 123 SVR12s, the 13 SVR4s, and the 4 virologic relapses, on treatment, if you will allow me that term, the cure rate is 97% in this particularly vulnerable population. In summary, this stuff works, especially in a vulnerable population. Many people look at me and think all Canadians are alike, and we're not. All injection drug users are not alike. But if you design the right system for vulnerabilized populations, you can achieve very high cure rates and have them include themselves in World Health Organization mandated elimination goals for hepatitis C. Thank you very much. I will now take a breath.
Brian's
I've not
left
given
himself.
that in 2 minutes and 30 seconds before.
I know, you've left yourself lots of time for questions. This is great.
So 2 minutes and 4 seconds for questions.
Does anyone have anything for Brian? I will start whilst you're thinking. I'm aware you're here to present the results of the SVRs, which was amazing. Is the trial set up to design any other outcomes? Obviously, this is a population with a lot going on. Are there any measures beyond SVR that you're looking at in terms of success?
3 good ones. The continued engagement in care. Our program is multidisciplinary. It provides opiate agonist therapy. It provides social supports and many other things. So I think we're able to measure maintenance of engagement in care. And there's very few loss to follow-up. So on that, we're doing very well. In terms of opioid mortality, in our population, we would have expected there to be more deaths compared to the general population and environment. So we do very well in that particular regard. And specifically focusing on opiate agonist therapy and maintenance on that, again, you would expect at 6 months follow-up, the standard is 60% maintenance on opiate agonist therapy. We far exceed that. In my next 10-minute talk, I will talk about that. But that's this is exactly the point of these programs. I love that question.
Yeah.
What strategies did you employ to not lose anybody to follow up?
We recruit individuals through their place of residence. So we know where they live, and we send out a mobile medical van to engage them in care if they don't show up for appointments. A few other things we do, but it's really a priority of our program to reduce loss to follow-up.
Time for one quick question if anyone has one. Or you're free to go.
We'll
Thank you
let
so
Brian
much.
breathe. So up next we have Katie Burke, who is a consultant at Facente Consulting. I should know how to pronounce that, thank you. Leading projects related to Hep C, overdose, and SSPs. I don't know what that is. What is SSPs?
Syringe service programs.
Thank you. Previously, Kate was the viral hepatitis coordinator at the SF San Francisco Department of Public Health. She developed a portfolio of Hep C services and co-founded Hep C San Francisco, the USA's first citywide Hep C elimination initiative. Welcome.
Thank you. Honored to be here. Thanks for everyone else's presentations. So we've heard a lot about the really amazing data coming out of countries and their elimination initiatives, but I think we've heard a little bit less about the process of how people work together in trying to achieve hepatitis C or hepatitis B elimination. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about collective impact as an organizing framework for hepatitis C elimination and the importance of process evaluation to supplement our quantitative data. So we have many barriers to hepatitis C elimination in the US, not the least of which are our data limitations. We have no nationalized healthcare system. We're reliant on surveillance data. In San Francisco, our surveillance data are particularly poor and really irregularly published. And so Shelley Facenti, who's in the room, did a study where she triangulated a couple of different data sources to estimate hepatitis C prevalence in San Francisco. So we found that there was an estimated 11,500 people with active hepatitis C infection in San Francisco, and like in other places, the majority of our hepatitis C infections are among people who inject drugs. So they make up 90% of our active hepatitis C infections, despite only being 3% of the total population. Also disproportionately impacted are men and people born between 1945 and 1965, which we call baby boomers in the US. So collective impact is the way that we organize our initiative and our work. And this is a framework that brings people of various institutions, experiences, and expertise together in a structured way to achieve social change. So in doing collective impact work, we really try to center equity in the way that we're addressing hepatitis C elimination and prioritize the voices of people in the community that have lived experience with hepatitis C. So the 5 pillars of a collective impact framework are having a common agenda, which for us is hepatitis C elimination, having common progress measures, having mutually enforcing activities, continuous communication, and backbone support, which just means a small subset of people that are helping to move the initiative forward. So the way that we've organized our initiative in San Francisco is we have 4 main work groups who meet regularly: a community research and surveillance group with researchers and epidemiologists, a treatment access group with physicians and pharmacists, a policy and advocacy group with policy advocates, and a prevention testing and linkage group, which are mostly folks working in syringe service programs and community-based testing organizations. We also have an additional executive advisory committee that meets less frequently and varying ways of involving community members with lived experience, who we find often prefer other methods of participation beyond just joining a work group that meets regularly. So again, as we have a fragmented healthcare system in the US and poor quality surveillance data in San Francisco, we've developed some indicators and pulled from various data sources that we use as proxies to determine our progress toward hep C elimination. So we follow our data trends related to testing, linkage, and treatment, and we post them on our website to ensure transparency and accountability to the community. We update these quarterly. And we consider these activities the what of our hep C elimination efforts, so the work we take to move the needle toward elimination. But we also think monitoring the how of how we do this work is equally important. And so we check in informally throughout the year, but we also do a formal process evaluation each year to get a sense of the effectiveness of our functioning as a collective impact initiative and people's experiences in working with us. So we collect qualitative data on people's experiences and ask them what they think. So this quote is from a member who is pointing to challenges with the continuous communication pillar of collective impact. If we hadn't asked about this, we wouldn't know that we need to improve our systems around this. The person says, as a participant in just one work group, it has been hard for me to track what's going on in other work groups. I sense that we operate in a bit of a silo. It's hard to track what progress is being made. So taken together, we know that hep C treatment initiation increased by 12% and mortality decreased between 2020 and 2021. And we also know, because we asked about process, that it was really appreciated that we worked to keep folks connected during the early days of the COVID-19 shutdowns, despite many of us having been diverted to work on COVID-19. But we also know that we have a lot of work to do around continuing to enhance our community representation and improving our communication mechanisms within the initiative. So we know that outcome data alone do not tell the complete story of hepatitis C elimination, and supplementing that information with qualitative process data really compels a more complete understanding of our progress and our success, and will help to guide our future priorities. Thank you very much for your time.
That was fantastic, thanks. And I don't know if I've missed this or if it's the obvious question to ask. I'm going to jump the gun here, but How did you increase 12% during COVID?
Well, we had such a steep drop-off kind of at the beginning that I think we really did make a lot of efforts to keep folks connected, and we continued to meet monthly. And so, especially with the prevention testing linkage group, which were the people that were out in the community doing community-based testing, they really served as a support in the absence of having any like safety information about how to do rapid testing from the health department. They kind of developed their own safety protocols and tried different things and worked with folks. And so they kind of spurred each other on as they started to kind of increase their testing activities.
That's fantastic. Anyone else? Thank you.
Our final speaker of the session is Louise Hansford. Louise is the HCV later elimination coordinator for the NHS Addiction Provider Alliance. She oversees HCV improvement strategies, data quality and innovation projects across 6 NHS trusts in England. She is registered public health practitioner and currently studying for her MSc Public Health.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Louise Hansford from the United Kingdom, and I just want to start off by saying that it's a real privilege to be at INHSU and to present this project. So I'm in long-term recovery from drug addiction, and what I would say is my transferable skills of convincing anybody that I was in front of with somebody else's credit card, that I was actually that person, have really served me well in my career, because how we've collectively, and my colleagues are in the room, how we've pulled this off has been nothing short of miraculous. So our van came as part of a substance misuse contract in 2015, and predictably we had this all singing, dancing 75-grand van, but nobody to go take the van out. So in 2016, I just decided I was going to take this van out and do a treatment run on it. And it was really, really successful, and we got like 100% attendance, it was just phenomenal. And so Forward Wind, NHS England put expressions of interest out for funding. So I actually went to our commissioner and said, hey, this might be a bit out there, but I'd really like to set this up. The only thing is, we would have to set it up across the area. So actually we had 7 different drug services that normally are competitors for contracts. We have 5 different local community commissioners that, again, all are quite precious about their resources. We had hepatology nurses, and at one of our meetings, we literally had 40 different stakeholders that never before had been in the same room for a common purpose. So it has been a bit like, for any of you that have watched old-fashioned English films, it has been a bit like Carry On Clinical Van. We have made it up as we've gone along. We've utilised peers, we've utilised stakeholders, we've utilised academics. Combi Clinic were absolutely phenomenal. The Find and Treat. I do the Twitter thing now. They've been really, really supportive of, and everybody's just come together. So we, primarily we are funded to deliver Hep C services, but we also utilise the UAM survey, which is a rich data source in England, the needle exchange, and just getting that community feel. So our data, so the systems that we've got within drug services are mainly run by UK HSA and OHID. They're not designed to collect clinical data. They're treatment outcomes. You're going to ring the bell on me, aren't you? But what I want to emphasise is we were fortunate enough to have an MSD-funded Kefiab machine, and honestly, this has transformed the landscape for our service users. I set up a project 10 years ago and had about 50 people. For love nor money, we could not get them onto treatment because we couldn't get any blood out of them. And Alan and Sean and the van team have just got those guys, and it's a real privilege to see those people getting their treatment. So that's our data. It's ongoing. We're adding more and more data sets to it because we've got ideally placed to collect some outcomes. So this is one of the quotes. So we ask our clients to give us feedback because we want to make this sustainable. We don't just want this initiative to be gone when Hep C elimination money in the UK comes to an end or is restricted. So yeah, and just my final slide is just an acknowledgement. You know, everybody makes this van. It may be headed up by Alan, Sean and the team, but actually the stakeholders, the drug services, you know, the hepatology nurses, the peers, the patients, it's just phenomenal, and it will go down as one of my career highlights. Thank you.
Any questions for Louise? Louise, where does the van go? I mean, like, are you out at night, at day? What's the story with it?
So we've been over the most expensive stretch of water in the UK to the Isle of Wight. The actual area spans about 150 miles. So we've got areas of deprivation, we've got rural areas, we've got inner city areas, clean air zones. Who knew we had to pay fines? You know, so it goes anywhere and everywhere. You know, we are mainly daylight hours because obviously we just have to assess the risk if we start going out at night. And one of the other things about, you know, we're not opposed to doing evening work, but our hepatology nurses aren't going to come out of an evening. Our doctors aren't going to come out and do liver assessments and fibre scans. So we just got to be sensible about it. But it is, honestly, it's ever evolving, and no idea has been just dismissed out of hand.
Rob Fair from Inclusion MPFT. Your project with data, how critical has been having people who understand data working with you as part of an integrated team?
It's been absolutely fundamental. You know, it's obviously the evidence base allows us to secure funding and repeat funding, but it also allows us to see the trends. So we've got lots of rich data sources in the UK, but unfortunately they don't talk to each other. So on one database, there'll be all these people lost to follow-up, which I hate that terminology. Who lost them? How did they get lost? Who looked for them? You know, but actually, it breaks our heart as a van team that there's like 70 people in our area listed as lost to follow-up, that they weren't lost to follow-up. If you went and asked the local drug services, they're seeing them regularly. So it has been absolutely imperative, and as a team, we're trying to triangulate all the different sources so that we get the best outcomes for our patients.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Thank you to all our speakers this morning, this afternoon. I don't think we have any parish notices to read.
Enjoy lunch.
Enjoy lunch.